So did you come up with anything for a skit? What did you have in mind?
Nothing great. I thought see, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I just thought PWTee and then NRD, like, I thought of RVD kind of like us battling, him going PWTee and then we go NRD. I don't know. it's not I'm not it's not the best.
No, it's not.
I know, it's like I just throw it all out there all the time. Maybe we'll come up with something while we record.
We could, and if you just come up with anything at the end, worst comes to worst, we'll just say that this is the opening and just go with that.
Very true.
You're watching DCTV. Now here's your host, the voice, Dave Canning. It's you, it's me, it's DCTV. It's you, it's me, it's DCTV. Let's start the show.
I'm trying to remember what the hell the opening is again. these concussion problems. My head hurts so much. But that is right, ladies and gentlemen. It is you. It is me. It is NRD. Welcome to episode 16 of the Wrestling Nerd broadcast. I'm sorry. My mind is a little fuzzy right now after that brutal attack by the Magnificent Margaret during our Patreon exclusive Q&A Sunday, but I will battle through and I will make it through this episode. No problem. The doctors have cleared me to record tonight's show. But we are not alone. As you can see on the screen, we are joined by Pro Wrestling Tee's very own Alberto, Scrump, Lara. Alberto, welcome to the show, sir.
Bang, bang. What is up, you guys? It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for coming on. So, Alberto, the first question we ask every guest that we have, what makes you a wrestling nerd?
I mean, for the longest, up until the go home show for WrestleMania, the go home SmackDown for WrestleMania 20, I was that kid that was way too cool for wrestling. I specifically remember making fun of all my friends for being into wrestling. I was just like, come on, wrestling. Then I found Eddie Guerrero, and now 16 years later, most of my office and bedroom is decorated like that 12-year-old would have, with like an adult, with adult money. Like, I guess what makes me, I've got several wrestling tattoos. I have Pro Wrestling Tees tattooed on me. So fingers crossed Ryan doesn't fire me, because then it's just like having your ex-girlfriend's name tattooed on you,
Never do that.
Get the red banner. Get the red circle on the line. It'll never happen.
It's like right here too. So it's like, it'd be weird. I've got my punk tattoo as well. I got like a little lucha skull over here as well. I tend to just put anything on my body, really. I've got a giant Kevin Smith on my leg, so I clearly don't listen to my mother when she told me to stop getting tattoos. But I don't know, man. I tend to, like with my podcast, the PWTCast, I tend to, like, with my co-host Stank, former guest on the show.
Yes.
I'll be like, we don't necessarily have to talk wrestling, but we always, much like with life, everything is wrestling. And sooner or later, we wind up just like circling back around to wrestling. Like earlier today, we did a review with for our Patreon, and we talked about Twister. And there was several instances in which we somehow like brought it back to wrestling, which again, you'd think, how do you get wrestling out of, Bill Paxton? We found a way, we always find a way.
The third partner in natural disasters: earthquake, typhoon, Twister.
There you go.
Was it Texas tornado? Is that the title?
Oh yeah,
Twister with Bill Paxton. It had, I don't know if did you guys ever get on the ride at Universal Studios? Yeah. That was a thing we talked about.
Never been.
I'm sure
when
Nick
I
can
went
attest
with
to
my
this.
family when I was a kid, it was like the brand new ride at the time.
and didn't you, like, we talked about this, the whole ride, the whole leading up to everything, you think it's going to be some crazy ride, and you get there and it's more so just an educational
you
video.
Just like stand in the room and then here comes the tornado.
Yeah, it's more so just an educational video by Bill Paxton, letting you know the dangers of a tornado, of a Twister, really. They've since replaced it with like a Jimmy Fallon ride or something, but to me, it'll always be the Twister ride.
Is it still Jimmy Fallon giving information about Twisters? 'Cause
I don't know. I was so upset that they replaced it that I've just refused to get on it. And the subsequent times I've gone, I'm just like, I'm gonna go get on the Mummy because it's right next door to it.
Are you guys
So-
talking about Universal back east?
Florida, yeah.
Florida, yeah.
Orlando.
Okay. I was gonna say, man, that's awesome. They took away, because I live West Coast. They took away the Back to the Future ride, replaced it
Yeah,
with
it's
the
not in
Simpsons.
Orlando anymore either.
Yeah.
They did that in
Simpsons are awesome, but still, don't replace
I
Back
think
to
it's
the
like
Future.
Men in Black now or something like that.
no, they replaced it with the Simpsons over.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought I heard
Simpsons,
The
that's what it
Simpsons.
is. Okay,
in
yeah.
Orlando too, because same thing. I went down to Universal for WrestleMania in Miami. So I bought 2 tickets. Me and my friend were supposed to go. He bailed. He couldn't go. My dad goes, "Hey, I'll buy the ticket off of you. Me, you, and your brother will drive down there." I think perfect, cool. Turns into a whole family road trip with my parents, my sister, the baby, her boyfriend, my brother. What should have been one long 14-hour drive, it took us 2 days to get there. But we wind up in Universal, and I was so excited to get on this Back to the Future ride. And then I show up, and it was like the bare bones of the Simpsons ride. There's so much more now, but when I got there, I was just like, "Where is it?" And there's like a video too where like they tease you about it, and I was like, "Oh, well, they've got a DeLorean over there, and then the train from the third one, so that's cool." But no, I think Japan, Universal Studios Japan, still has it. So hey, when the world reopens up, maybe I go over there and check out Wrestle Kingdom and the Back to the Future ride in the same weekend. Yeah.
Can I come with you? Because that just sounds like a whole lot of fun.
Let's do it.
I'll drive and to the airport. I mean, if you
Well, yeah,
Google,
like-
what's that?
Yeah, I was like, Wrestle Kingdom was one of the things. Like Wrestle Kingdom and PWG was the one things where I just put off for the longest, and then like the pandemic happened, and I was just like, oh, yeah, I'm like probably should have bit the bullet on those.
It happens. But you mentioned the PWT cast that you do with David Stank, and that we had on the shows. I almost knocked my computer over. But take us through how did you guys decide to make that birth the PWT cast, and also how did you get the nickname Scrump?
2 different. Let's go with the nickname Scrump because I'm just used to telling that one
Okay.
so often. Shortly after I discovered wrestling, in 6th grade, I believe I was in like 5th, 6th grade, one of the two. My friend Stephanie, she just started calling me Scrumptious. That was just the thing. She just started calling me that. I said, "Hell yeah, of course." I'm in 6th grade. I don't care. I've also because my dad and I were both Albertos. I'm actually the 3rd.
Okay.
But yeah, so I'm just like, whatever. If you want to give me a nickname, by all means. Like at the shop, everyone calls me Berto. Like it's just everyone has a nickname. So right around the 7th grade ish, my best friend Ivan, I follow him everywhere. Like he would skateboard. I'm so clumsy I can't skateboard, but I'd be around with my scooter. And typically whatever he did, I would just follow him and do the same. Right around this time, he starts doing graffiti. And so I'm like, all right, I guess I'm a tagger now. And I needed a cool tagging name. And I'm so uncreative, I couldn't think of anything. And he's like, "Why don't you just do Scrumptious?" I'm like, "Well, by the time I'm done writing that, the police will already be there because it's so long." And I was like, "What do you think of Scrump?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure, do that." My freshman year of high school, I get arrested for graffiti. So I quickly dropped that, but the name just stuck with since then. And it's just sort of become synonymous with like, that's just my alter ego, I guess. I don't, the Batman to my Bruce Wayne almost. It just really depends. Like there's certain people who only know me as Alberto. And if they call me Scrump, I'm like, the fuck? But can I curse on this?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Why
fuck
not?
yeah. Hell yeah.
Did you listen to our interview with Frank last week? I stopped counting after about 3 curse words.
Frank Spike swears? No.
Barely.
Yeah.
He said "but," I think.
Which is he's done the same thing on ours. It's anytime anyone says that, they're like, "Can I swear?" I'm like, by all means, like curse like a sailor. But yeah, no, the name just stuck around. So like I mentioned, there's some people that only know me as Scrump, and then when they call me Alberto, same thing. I'm like, what? Oh, like the few times, like Cole Cabana, for instance, as long as I've known him, he's only called me Scrump. The very few times he's called me Alberto, I'm just like, oh shit, am I in trouble? Like what did I do? But no, the way the PWT cast was started was, essentially just with the way the relationship between Stank and I would just be that he would only be in the office 2 days a week, sometimes 3, but now it's mostly 2. He would come in and he's sort of like the special attraction, because when he comes, like Tuesdays and Thursdays, if Frank is not in his office and someone is looking for him, 9 times out of 10, I'm like, go over by Stank. He's probably over there, because we all like to be around Stank because we only see him so often.
Mhm.
There was one weekend where myself and Matt Nix, who also works over at Pro Wrestling Tees, we were there on a weekend doing heat presses, like the Bullet Club shirt Nick's wearing. It's just some shirts are heat presses, so we were doing those. And it was like we were behind, so I was helping him. He and I also have this relationship where we will just think of something and do it. Like, for instance, we moved for a year, we lived next door to the shop, like simply because there was an apartment for rent and we were like, we should live together. And just so many of the things we've done, it's just been like, yeah, like we should just do this without thinking of any actual like work we need to put into it. We just do things. And I had mentioned at the time, I'm like, I listen to so many podcasts. I kind of just want to start my own. And he was like, you should do it 100%, do it. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I'm like, I got to buy equipment. I got to find a host. He's like, well, I have equipment, because he has started a podcast, but he kind of fell off. He's like, I have the recorder. Like, I have microphones. Like, you can use it. You can have it. And so I called Stank because originally the way I pitched it in my mind was it was the PWTcast featuring the PWTcast, but that's also just a mouthful. So I was like, all right, well, just the PWTcast. And there's so many different people that like I get along with at the shop that I figured, hey, 1 week I can have Frank on, the next week I can have Michael on, the next, just etc. But Stank and we just had such a good dynamic and chemistry, and like I didn't really want to do it with anyone else but Stank. Like to this day, I've not had to do it with anyone else. And he's busy. Like I'm a single guy, so I don't have like a wife and kid to go home to. He does. Conversely, like I'm busy a lot of the times, but it's a lot easier for me to just like, oh, I'll move those boxes, as opposed to him, who he's like, I need to draw this stuff and send it to AEW, by 10 o'clock or something. Like he definitely has more of a workload than I do. But we've made it work. Like we're almost at 100 episodes now. And like, I've not had to, like, there's people who I've, like, hey, I may need you to do the podcast with me. And they're always more than happy to do it. But yeah, I like at this point, I think I would feel like I'm cheating on him, like cheating like on a spouse if I didn't do it with him. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of basically the origin of the PWTcast. And funny enough, I found a list the other day of ideas that we had for the PWTcast that were definitely more like t-shirt oriented. Because again, this was pre-COVID, and we had have a whole setup with like displaying t-shirts, much like Ryan does. And then we just found out it would be way more easier to just sit down with microphones and talk about how much we enjoyed HBO's Watchmen, as opposed to like this week the top sellers were this and that, because we also record so weirdly that like if I say, oh, this week Danhausen's the top seller, next week it might be Moxley, and by the time you actually listen to it, it might be someone else. So I don't know, it's more fun to just talk about everything else. There's enough wrestling podcasts out there that cover actual wrestling. Not enough of them try to talk Falcon and Winter Soldier with like Eric Bischoff like I do.
So you mentioned you're approaching 100 episodes. Like you're less than 10 at this point.
As of right now, we're 8. So this Monday, as of right now that we're talking, it will be episode 92. So we're 8 episodes away.
Okay, and you were gonna have Ryan Barkin on for episode 100. Is that still the plan?
Yeah. So originally, same thing. So with Dave and I, so we come up with this idea like December of like 2018 maybe, and then we don't actually get started till about June or May. I forget exactly when. the first episode drops. But it was more so, again, like we were both busy, so we would just kind of put it on the back burner. And then I remember I was in Toronto for SummerSlam. So no, a little bit before that. So we finally were like, hey, let's just go in there and ask Ryan, because that was the thing too. We figured Ryan loves Stank. Stank won't admit it. Right next to Frank, Stank is Ryan's favorite person at the shop, and it's hard not to. It's hard not to love Stank. You guys have talked to him. Like,
yeah, he's great.
I know one person who had problems with Stank, and it made sense if you got to know her why she had a problem with him.
She no longer works at PWTee.
I mean, she still does, but there's definitely.
If she listened to this, would she know that we're talking about her?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh, okay.
I mean, and she's never she doesn't listen to podcasts, so it's fine.
Oh, okay.
But so me and Stank, we come up with this whole pitch. We get Steak makes these graphics. I get the theme song made for us. Like, we're ready to go in there. I have like a list of things we're gonna pitch to him, and the conversation goes like this. We like knock on his door. Hey Ryan, can me and Stank talk to you? He's in his chair. He goes, if it's about a raise, I'm not going to give you any more money. Like, no, it's nothing about that. Goes, all right, what do you want? We're like, so me and Dave, we've been thinking about starting our own podcast, and we want to call it the PWTCast, because we work at Pro Wrestling. Yeah, sure. Huh? Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead. Oh, okay. Yeah. Why? Oh no, it's just we had this whole pitch. We want to show you the logos, and we have this music. And he's like, okay, I guess show me. And so we show him, and then he had 3 rules. 1, don't ask him for money for equipment, which we're like, that's fine. 2, don't ask him to ask wrestlers if they want to be on the podcast, which he since then has been like, oh, do you want me to ask this person? Like, there was one time during all the elite guys were there for All In or All Out, one of those weekends. Cody Rhodes was sitting in the garage because DDP was doing some sort of seminar and Brandy was there. Ryan comes up to us afterwards. He's like, this guy was sitting over there for like an hour. Why didn't you tell me to go ask him if he wanted to be on your show? And we're like, because you fucking told us to never do that. And he was like, oh, my bad. And so, that was that. But the third rule was don't ask him to be on the show, because Ryan hates doing interviews. He's done Jericho's, Chris Van Vliet's, and I think he did one with Matt Cardona. But the guy hates doing interviews. Prior, he would send me to do interviews for him, because he's really camera shy. He's really just shy in general. Mm-hmm. So of course, immediately we started advertising him for episode 100, and I don't think he thought we were going to get to episode 100. Because there's people at the shop who would have their own podcasts and weren't as consistent with it. And I get it, it's not, you guys as well, it's not always the easiest. But I don't think he thought we're going to get to 100. And now we're slowly approaching there. And the other day he was like, what episode are you on? I was like, brother, you're up in 2 months. It winds up being on my birthday, I believe that we're recording. If I timed it out right, I think it's my birthday, if not my birthday week. So getting an interview with him will actually be quite the fun birthday present, because it's weird too, because Stank and I, as much as he is our boss, we also do consider him a friend, a close friend. We talk to him about more than just work and stuff. His kids, I'm Uncle Alberto to his kids and things like that. So it's weird because it's I know so much about you. So, but there's so many people that don't, so it's maybe there's something that, someone's ask him about this. And there's also some really fun stories that I'm you can't talk about that, So it'll be a fun episode. It is also a little for Stank and I intimidating, because it'll probably be one of the most listened to episodes. Mm-hmm. So it's with those, Stank and I try to not that we don't put effort in, but sometimes it's if we mess up or flub something, I'm it's okay. I'm not going to go in there and edit that. But then there's some episodes where it's all right, we have to make sure everything is, that we don't talk too much about this, so we don't say anything dumb. So it is a little nerve wracking. But it's fun. Like I mentioned, I just enjoyed talking especially with the people that we work with, because like so many of the people there at the shop and stuff, I know how cool they are. I know how fun they are. I know like these interesting stories that they have. And I love nothing more than to, present them to the world. I want the whole world to know how cool and how fun and like the weird little things that they, think about.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I've listened to several episodes. It's just great. It's just like listen to wrestlers talk about something other than wrestling. You get to know them more as people rather than just what you see on your screen on a weekly basis. And I think that's a great thing about the PWT cast. So I think it would be great. There should be like a commemorative PWT cast t-shirt for episode 100 with like Barkin, just not even looking like he's interested at all.
I mean, Stank and I are definitely trying to come up with some fun things for it. Like, I mean, so for people who are subscribed to like our Patreon, which anyone can sign up to, the lowest tier is like $5. We want to do like a special like Q&A episode with him, because there's some, like, if anyone is in the PWT VIP group, just all day people are, hashtag Hey Ryan. Like yeah, like I to the point where he came out with a shirt that said Hey Ryan, that I wore on one of the shows, like one of the AEW shows. It might have been All Out or something. Like I wore it just because he said I wouldn't. He's just like, don't wear that, and I was like, I'm gonna wear it. But yeah, Stank and I are trying to come up with some fun stuff for episode 100, because, and it's so weird too, because episode 100 is a big milestone, but then 4 weeks later, it's technically like the 2-year anniversary with episode like 104. So both of those being so close to each other, we'll definitely come up with some fun stuff.
I got an idea for 104. 100, you have Ryan B, Ryan C. 104, I'm available.
Wait. It's funny too, because like we've had, like with Ryan being the big 100, one of the things that I wanted to do was get as many of the Barkins as I could on beforehand. Like we got his wife on an episode, we got his parents on an episode, he has 2 brothers, and mind you, we still have 2 months, so I might just reach out to them. But like I mentioned, like I wanted to do something too with his kids, and like with the oldest probably, but the younger ones, there'd be no way I could stick a microphone and they wouldn't just yell in front of it. But that was like one of the things too, where like, let's get all the Barkins like that we can on here, just because the best is hearing these stories about Ryan. Like you sometimes, like even on the episode like that we had with Frank, the first one, where he talked about like getting to know them and stuff, it's like you hear some of these stories and you're like, these were little monsters. Like they're definitely, they remind me of the Goonies. That bunch of friends definitely reminds me of like the Goonies.
Who's Chunk?
Frank. Frank, or I mean, there's another one of their buddies too, but probably Frank. Like there's something about Frank. I always talk about like he is the king of the misfits. Like you could put him in any situation with any people, like people he doesn't know. Like whenever we would have autograph signings at the stores, for instance, Frank is, I'm sure as you guys know, like he knows wrestling, but he's not the biggest wrestling fan, obviously Attitude Era, but the Lapsed fan since then. And like, he'll go to the shows and stuff, but he'll call Sting Stung because that's just who Frank is, things like that. But he just always has a way. Like, again, we'd have these autograph signings and there'd be these like his regulars that just every time they just go to Frank. Same thing at the shop. Like Frank comes in and he does his lap around the store, and it's every single person has to talk with him and say something to him. And like I remember one time, it was me and a girlfriend at the time. We were at some Wizard World convention with Frank and his wife. We were getting posters signed by Biff Tannen. I forget the actor's name, but we were getting, there's giant almanac posters signed by Biff Tannen. We're standing there, we're just talking, and there's these 2 dudes in Star Trek suits come up to him, and they're like, "Hey, how are you doing?" Frank, as far as I know, has seen 1 Star Trek movie. I was there with him. We both were so bored. It was like Star Trek 4, of the newer ones, of the J.J. Abrams. It was the newest one. We were so bored. We were just bored the whole movie just talking. And no one, that's the good thing too, no one's going to tell Frank to shut up because he's such a big guy, you know? But also there was maybe like 4 people in that auditorium. We were the 4. But yeah, these guys come up to him. They're like, hey, we know you. And we're like, oh, are they maybe wrestling fans? They go, you were at TrekCon in Cincinnati, right? He's like, no. They're like, no. Yeah, you were at the Trek. No, you were at the one in Buffalo, right? He's like, no. And they sat there trying to convince him that he was at this con with them, you know. And then she's like, no, sorry, fellas. They walk away. Me and his wife look at each other. We're like, 100%. He could have convinced them that he was in fact at that thing, made up some imaginary story that all 3 of them experienced, and they would have walked away going like, oh yeah, that was a fun time where we got into Oscar Mayer Wienermobile and got pulled over by the police or something. Some wild story that he could have done, and they would have 100% like believed them. You know? Absolutely.
He should. I'm knowing just the brief conversation we had with Frank last week. I'm surprised he didn't do that.
I mean, listen, I love the guy. He's like a brother to me almost, as much as like, you know, like a mentor and stuff. But like those kinds of things happen more frequently than not. The amount of times that like, again, he almost reminds me of Kramer at a point. You know, there's a lot of Kramer in him where like he'll do or say or get away with things that like any of us would like not be able to do, but just by virtue of it's Frank, he gets away with it.
Reversing the peephole on his apartment door so he can see if anybody's broken in or anything.
Yeah, he's definitely a wild one. But that's the kind of the fun thing too about working here at Pro Wrestling Tees is that like there's such an eclectic group of us that like, again, if I told you like, yeah, someone at the shop did get arrested because they stole the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile, you know, and they drove it across state lines. Like something like that probably, you know, would happen with the people that work there just because, again, we're all just such a random bunch of weirdos. But, you know, I love everyone there who works with us.
Everyone's family is full of weirdos. So don't so I mean,
exactly.
So you mentioned everyone at the shop. Now when we had Stank on, we had Frank on, when we had you on, my research, I watched the behind the merchandise video on YouTube, and I feel like you got cut short. You only got about 30 seconds to describe what you did. So I was going to give you the floor to take us through a typical day for you at Pro Wrestling Tees.
So with that specifically with the documentary, the funny part is, so I rewatched it myself recently, and because I'm just so used to like a lot of times in the shop, it's a lot of like people yelling back and forth at each other. You know, some like we'll just sometimes think of something stupid. Like there's this one guy, Jeremy. He's one of the print managers, or he's a print manager. Myself and Matt Ninks will randomly yell out "Daddy's scaring me" in like a British accent. Why? No idea. It's just a thing that we do, you know. And there's a lot of like small instances like that throughout the video because no point did they tell us they were recording. Like we saw the guy walking around with the camera, but at no point were they like, "Hey, be quiet." We're like, you know, like as comparing it to like when me and Ryan, like, we filmed the skit for Being the Elite once, and literally everybody shut up. We had to shut off the machines because they make too much noise. Like it just, so it's like me and Ryan, like if you watch it, it's me and Ryan. And then behind us is 12 employees all just watching us because, you know, it was like quiet on set. We have to be quiet. But like no one ever really asked us. And I don't believe, like Ryan had told us like, hey, this day, you know, so-and-so and so-and-so, they're going to talk to you. This day, so-and-so. I don't remember him telling me anything, so I was just prepared. And that day actually wasn't prepared because my hair was a little like weird. I mean, whatever. It's very that. Thank you. But they came up to me to ask me what I do, and I said, "If Frank," the way I said it was like, "Oh, well, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, you'll get this reference. Frank is the Hand of the King. I'm like the hand of the king to the hand of the king because I am I don't know if I've ever been giving an official title. Like I started out as reception and then sort of just made my way up to like Frank's right hand. So I guess by that you could say I'm like assistant operations manager. I'm not exactly again, I'm not exactly sure what my job title is, because much like Frank is someone who taught me like learn how to do everything, because like today we had a guy call out sick, and it was one of those situations where it was like, well, it's either me or Frank who are going to do this, and Frank has seniority, so I'm probably going to jump on and do this. But to be fair, he was like, if you want, I'll do it. But I was like, it's fine. Like I'll take care of it. So I believe I said that, and then I also at that time I was throwing around head of podcast relations, simply because there was another guy at the shop who had a podcast, and I was just like, well, I'm head of podcast relations now, just as a joke. But like a normal everyday for me is. I take care of a lot of the 1 Hour Tee stuff. 1 Hour Tee is our sister company. Orders will come in boxes and stuff. I will to get the boxes, open it up, match the shirts to the invoice. There's things that have priority. Some things that wait, because again, with the whole way 1 Hour Tee works is you can get it. If we have the garment, you get the T-shirt in an hour. Or if you want to wait, the cheapest option is 7 days. So we figured out a system to where this is what's getting printed today, this is what gets priority. I'm the guy who kind of has to take care of that, as well as I take care of wrestler orders. If Jeff Cobb needs 100 T-shirts shipped to him by Friday, then Wednesday I'll get the T-shirts, I'll get them printed, I'll make sure everything's there, everything looks good, get it shipped out to him. As well as like lately with a lot of like AEW orders, it was more so like when wrestling shows were happening, where a lot of wrestlers, what they'll do is they'll buy X amount of shirts to sell at the show. There's some wrestlers who they don't sell a lot on the website, but every week they're getting 500 shirts shipped to them, and then, or not 500, that's a little, they get 100, 200 shirts shipped to them, and they sell them all out at the shows. It depends. So I would take care of that. But again, like recently, a lot of AEW stuff, if they need hats shipped to them, because we have some of their hats, I'll take care of that stuff for them, as well as I print out the posters, I do the stickers, I help out with crate, like me and Frank will do a lot of the crate stuff. I can ship, I can print, I can pre-treat. When the shirts come off the belt, that's not hard because you're just folding a shirt. I can heat press. I pretty much just don't know sublimation, shoes, and how to write up an actual order. But like anything else there, again, I'm also someone who's just I constantly want to learn. I want to do things, which is why like when Ryan's like, oh, we're gonna get a poster printer, I'm like, oh, can I do it? Or we're gonna get a sticker machine, can I do that? It's just it helps when you're working there, and that's something that I do as well. Like we have younger people that work there with us. Like when I started there, I was the youngest person, like I was like, yeah, I just turned 20. I believe I was like 21, 22. And everyone looked at me as if I said, I just graduated kindergarten, but I've aged out. I've been there. I'll have been there 6 years in June. So what I kind of try to do now is like, everyone, like the younger guys, I'll try to take them under my wing, try to teach them as much as possible. I try to like just spread my knowledge, because if ever comes a day where Frank's like, hey, I'm retiring, and then I have to take over Frank's stuff, which same thing with Frank. He has been getting so much, he's constantly just getting more and more on his plate. It's one of the things I try to do is take some of those tasks and do what I can, because like, again, from the minute the guy walks in, as much as it's like, hey, Frank, how are you doing? It's, oh my God, Frank, can you put out this fire? Frank, can you put out that fire? Can you, like, me and Frank very much know what it's like to wake up to a text message from Ryan, because it's never usually like, hey, do you want to get lunch today? It's normally like, here's a fire, can you please put it out? And it's the way it is. But again, Frank has trained me well enough to where I think I can put out most fires. So in the movie, there was actually, like I said, like I believe it was like a minute of me just like rambling on, and it winds up just like being 30 seconds or so. But I mean, it was, you know, I enjoyed it regardless. Like, it's still crazy to me that Ryan was as in that documentary as much as he was, because like, again, I mentioned this guy
Yeah.
does not like doing interviews, does not like being in front of a camera, and his face is just all over it.
Yeah, I remember watching it. And I feel like there was almost two different Ryans we saw. It was Ryan when he gave the tour of the facility, and then when he just did his sit down one-on-one interview by himself. It was like, this is the guy they all talk about. Who's this guy giving a tour around PWTs?
Yeah, which is like, again, the same thing when the store was open, or when like before COVID, people would come and he'd give the tour, or like he normally gives a tour, you know, like if a wrestler comes in, like if a RVD comes in, you know, he'll show them around. This is where we do that, this, that. But then like when we would have events, everyone's kind of just running around doing things. And the last person you'd expect to like, hey, I'll give a tour of the shop is Ryan. But then, you know, there you are, like trying to get shirts like reprinted to stock the store or something. And he's like, yeah, this is the shelf where they stock this, and these are the printers. And I'm just like, okay, I guess. But I mean, the good thing too about Ryan, he's a really nice guy, and there's so many people, especially from within the wrestling group, who are like, come just to meet him. Like, I've told him consistently, I'm like, we could set up a meet and greet for you, and like you would draw pretty well. But like, he's such a shy guy that he doesn't think it would be a thing. Like,
what's that?
No, like I remember the weekend of Double or Nothing, first one. We were in Vegas, and my favorite thing to do was people would come up and they'd be like, "Are you Ryan from Pro Wrestling Tees?" And I'd be like, "Oh my god, yeah, he is. Do you want a picture?" And just put him on the spot, and they would take a photo. And I remember his wife; she joined us because we got there on like a Wednesday. His wife got there on like a Friday, and so it's like Friday night. We're in the MGM. It's packed, and people just keep coming up to him. And she was like, "Is this normal?" I'm like, "Julia, all weekend long, I've been taking photos of this guy. This guy's a celebrity." And he's just like, "No, I'm not. Stop telling people I am." But it's the best, you know, because like he underestimates just like how cool he is to some people.
Yep. He is definitely one of the most over people in wrestling. I'm waiting, and I'm sure everybody else in the Micro Brawler group is patiently waiting for the day that Ryan Barkin Micro Brawler.
I'm always telling him like to do a Ryan, and he's just like, "No, nobody will buy it. Nobody wants that." I'm just like, "Are you insane?" I'm like, people still talk about like the Hey Ryan t-shirt, but I mean, I don't know. Who knows? Like with the way the guy is, sometimes he surprises you guys in the group, and that's like when we find out.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like that's why like the one thing I always tell new employees is like follow him on social media, because sometimes you think like, oh yes, next weekend, like I have nothing to do, like I'll be able to, you know, just do this, that, and the other. And then we see it's like, oh, there's a sale, so we'll probably be busy that weekend then. Oh, well. Because, yeah, sometimes people are like, what? There's a sale. Nobody told me. And we're like, what? Didn't you see Ryan's Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook? He's like, and they'll be like, no. And it's like, oh, well.
We get the email about it.
Yeah, or you didn't get the email and the text notification either. Like, it's, you know. So who knows? Maybe he's working on them. Maybe, you know, for all I know, one day they might just show up at the shop and I'll be like, oh.
I also just thought of something. I mean, obviously, by the time this goes up on Tuesday, it's gonna be public knowledge. But there is a post from Ryan in the PWTee VIP group that says 2 major non-Bullet Club Day announcements. New things coming soon. One tomorrow and one next week. So actually, maybe by next Tuesday, might not be out. Do you have any inclination of what those announcements are going to be?
I don't. I actually went. So like I mentioned earlier, Dave and I were recording the Twister episode. That came up, and then I saw that he posted that. I asked him, and he did. I mean, he's probably kayfabing, but I asked him, and he said he didn't know. And Ryan hasn't told me anything either. Like there are some times where things do get ruined. I mean, not ruined, but like, because I'm also like I mentioned, I'm the one who sends things out to wrestlers. So like the most specific reason that I always think of is it was when Tama Tonga and Tangaloa turned on Kenny and the Bucks. Ryan's like, hey, can you ship the shirt out to Tama Tonga and Tanga shirt? And I look at the shirt, I'm like, I think it was like Bullet Club, like I don't know, Killer or something like that. And I'm just like, well, It's a cool shirt. Pack
Yes,
it, ship
well.
it out. Yeah. And then I'm like watching the show and they turn and they rip it off and they have the shirts on. And I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, I should have put two and two together that like that was but like I think also, like when Christian Cage showed up, I was in Jack's weekend, and I had no idea up until Sunday morning. I get a call from Ryan. He's like, "Hey, I really need your help." I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Like, what do you need?" Because it was me and one of my friends, Taffy. We had nothing to do up until the show. He's like, "I need you to go to this flea market." Okay, what do you need me to get from the flea market? He's like, I need you to get this custom t-shirt made because there's no 1 hour tees down in Florida for us to do it. And it was a shirt for Christian Cage. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's who's showing up today. That what should have been like a 20-minute thing took me about 4 hours because in Jacksonville, Florida, there are no like 1 hour tees, pro wrestling tees to just get like a nice custom shirt made like that. I was bouncing around malls, flea markets, because again, he called this one flea market. I showed up there and they were like, oh, our power's out on their like little vestibule thing. So like, our power's out. And I'm like, all right. Again, just driving around forever. He goes, oh, there's another t-shirt place in that same flea market. So I essentially went all around Jacksonville in Florida for about 4 hours, finally find the place, get the t-shirt made. So it's like things like that where sometimes that surprise gets ruined for me, but then it's awesome that I'm just like, I know it. Like, I'm not someone who lets spoilers like ruin things for me. Like, I remember when Avengers Endgame came out, Dave had like a bootleg copy or Stank had a bootleg copy. And he's like, you want to know? I'm like, don't tell me this. Don't tell me this. And he's like, you just have to watch this though. I'm like, fine. And it was a scene where Captain America gets Thor's hammer. I've
never seen the movie, by the way, but thanks.
Well, he gets Thor's hammer. Sorry. But like that, that scene, he told me about that. And I'm at the movie theaters watching that. And like, it didn't make it any less cooler for me because I know it's going to fucking happen. And then when it happens, it's just like awesome,
I do have a question about the Marvel universe because I've seen like 3 of them.
You actually haven't seen Endgame?
No, I haven't. I really haven't. But I've seen like a couple of the movies here and there. Like I've been it's on my bucket list of like when I get all that free time I keep saying I'm gonna get. Like I want to watch them all in the correct order. Is it the theatrical? Do I need to watch them in the theatrical release or that like thing where like they said like, oh, you need to watch this one first, then this, then this? What would you recommend?
I was having this conversation with somebody earlier in the week. Matt Nix, I mentioned him earlier. I've only seen it theatrically the way it came out. From having seen that, I don't necessarily think you would get anything like out of watching, Captain America first and then Captain Marvel and then Iron Man. Like if you just watch it the way it came out, I think it's fine. Like I haven't watched it like timeline wise, but I think you'd be fine either way. Like I've watched it, theatrically the way it was released, and I don't really think there would be much of a difference if I watched it again, like Captain America first and then Captain Marvel and then, Iron Man. Like you'll be fine.
Yeah, because my brother-in-law has his Plex account set up with 2 playlists. Like one's theatrical release and one is the correct order according to him. So I'm like, maybe I should just watch theatrical release just to make him mad. But
I mean, Disney Plus has that same option, and like I contemplated that myself. Yeah, because after Falcon and Winter Soldier, I was kind of just like, I want to rewatch this one. I was rewatching anything with Captain America in it basically, and like I saw that they had that option where they're like, timeline wise or theatrically, and I don't know. I might go listen. I might be in that same boat with you and go watch it timeline wise, and again, maybe I get some sort of like different opinion on it on second viewing, but I don't necessarily think it'll be that big of a deal.
And are you Marvel or DC if you had to pick a side?
I'd say Marvel. Like I grew up with just more Marvel in my life. Yeah, Ryan knows what I'm talking about. Like I was big into the Spider-Man the animated series, X-Men. I mean, don't get me wrong, like I love the Batman the animated series as well as a kid. Like that was like such an awesome, that show still holds up. Like, you know, you can put it on now and it's very much like it still holds up. Marvel though at heart, you know, like I like some DC stuff. Like I like Christopher Nolan's Batman movies. And then I actually like the Zack Snyder cut of the Justice League. A lot of the movies in between though, you know, don't really care.
Just Dark Knight is like the greatest movie ever made, in my opinion.
It's great. Like it works. It works.
It
You
really
know,
is.
it's about a mentally deranged man that dresses as a clown fighting a billionaire playboy philanthropist who dresses as a bat. And that just sounds crazy.
It sounds like Doink the Clown versus Ted DiBiase on another level. That's just
exactly. It sounds like something someone came up with like during a fever dream. And especially when you're just like, and not only that, but they gave this British dude millions of dollars to film it in downtown Chicago. Again, just sounds crazy, but like it works. It works on all levels.
So speaking of superheroes, I think we said our top 3 Tuesday was going to be superheroes we wanted made into brawlers. Is that what you said, Brian? Okay.
Correct.
So, Berto, we will let you go first on for our top 3 Tuesday. What superheroes would you want to see made into Micro Brawlers?
With this one, I want to say Iron Man, but I want a Tony Stark one because Iron Man, my favorite character, but Tony Stark himself is such like, especially in the MCU, like a compelling character, considering he starts off as this like arms dealer who's just a giant piece of shit. And like by the time you get around to Endgame, it's like just a complete 180. So definitely a Tony Stark one, a Tony Stark, a Micro Brawler, I feel would be awesome.
You're allowed a top 3, so you get 2 more.
Okay, so if we're doing Tony Stark, then we're also doing Iron Man because I love Iron Man, and it would be one of those things too where like in this scenario it's Dave making them because Dave, you know, king of the Micro Brawlers. I would constantly just like, but which armor are you going to go with? Are you going to go with the mark, you know, with this mark or that one or which, you know, like it would just be such like a surprise, at least to me, that I feel like it would be one of those things where I would just wait till it gets released. You know, sometimes he does that with things where he's like, do you want to take a peek at this? And I'm like, no, just show me when it's done. Like with a lot of our t-shirt designs, he'll be like, how is this looking? And I'm like, it's the most amazing. Like he's always sending me things. He's like, I don't know if that's any good. And I'm just like, are you insane? I'm like, that is amazing. Almost everything he sends me, I'm just like, I want to get that tattoo. It looks so awesome. So definitely Iron Man number 2. And then number 3, Black Panther. Love Black Panther. Love King T'Challa. Yeah, you know, Wakanda Forever. Like I always talk about, like as a Mexican person that loves Marvel comics, there is very little representation. So the closest things I have to Mexican superheroes are Rey Mysterio and Black Panther. So, you know, Black Panther would definitely, you know, round out that 3rd.
That'd be a cool mask to make, like half Black Panther, half Rey Mysterio.
I think Rey Mysterio.
Did he do Black Panther once?
Yeah, it was for like an indie show. I don't remember which one because I know it might have been for one of the Rumbles. I know he did. No, it was MVP that came out in the Killmonger getup.
That was
Rey Mysterio definitely has done Black Panther. I'm sure someone listening right now is yelling the name of the show, but no, he's definitely done Black Panther.
Definitely. So Nick, what are your top 3 superheroes you want to see made into brawlers?
Okay. So first off, I'm having a thing.
You are having some technical difficulties. Do you want to text me your top 3?
It's like really delayed.
Yeah, you are lagging a lot. So you know what? Nick's gonna tell us his top 3, and I'm gonna put them on the screen in his box right there. That's Nick's top 3 that we'll figure out. I promise. So Ryan, who are your top 3 superheroes that you want to see made?
Oh man, see, I could steal Nick's right now. I stole his last ones. I'm going to go Pyro, Blob, and Avalanche. Like a they're kind of like the flunky B villains, but I've always loved them. They're just, they're not perfect, but they try, and they look, they're toyetic, as we say. So it's my pick.
Nice representation of the Brotherhood right there.
Yeah.
So my top three, I tried to think of like how we could convert them with chases at the same time, because I try to be current on everything. So first one I did was Superman, because that is my favorite superhero. And you could do a chase of Bizarro, just to be kind of just invert the colors a little bit. Number two, you do Batman, the second best superhero. And then you could do like a chase of like old school Adam West Batman. And then number three, I don't know if it counts as a superhero, but I'm counting it because it's my list. Joker from Dark Knight, because it's just my favorite character in the history of movies. So I think Dark Knight is like the only movie that wasn't Star Wars that I saw in theaters more than once. So
I was like that. I was like that with Logan. Now that I'm older too, like a lot of superhero movies make me cry. Like you can put on some like sad movie about like the war, or like here's this like this family that was in the Holocaust and they made it out together in one piece, and people will cry and get super emotional about it, and I'll probably be like, yeah, that was a really good movie. You put on like Logan and I'm in tears. Like if I have a girl over and she's like, oh, let's watch Logan, I'm like, probably not. I'm like, no, probably not a good idea. But no, Dark Knight, like you mentioned, dude, it's so awesome. And like that, like to go out on that note, like for Heath Ledger, like,
yep,
insane.
It was great. One of the best movies of all time. I'd buy it on VHS if it was available. But yeah, so that is, before we wrap up, Alberto, we're gonna let you plug away whatever you want. Oh wait, what about a Micro Brawler? Did you?
Oh, no, we can let him plug. I didn't know if Alberto wants to stick around for some Micro Brawler talk.
Yeah,
we'll make that Patreon exclusive. How about that?
Let's do it.
So yes, Berto, plug away as much whatever you want to do with PWTCast and all that good stuff.
So if you want to follow the podcast, it's at PWTCast on Instagram and Twitter. Ryan here showing off the Christmas card. If you want a Christmas card like Ryan, you can sign up for the Patreon. It's just patreon.com/PWTcast. There's 4 different tiers. There's what if you just want a Christmas card. If you don't want any additional content, there's a tier for that. There's a tier for Stank and I. We do a movie review called Scrump and Stank's Family Video, which Ryan, you'll see some fun artwork for that pretty sooner rather than later. There's another podcast that we do. It's kind of just us, like a retrospective looking back at like Power Rangers. Dave and I are also a big fan of Power Rangers. That's called Go Scrump and Stank. An additional tier if you want that. And then there's the 4th tier. If you want to jump on a podcast with us and review a movie, you'll find all that there. So that's patreon.com/PWTcast. And we'll actually have like a special Patreon episode with Ryan. More information on that later. But yeah, for regular podcast episodes, it's at PWTcast, wherever you listen to your podcasts, at PWTcast on Instagram and Twitter. You'll find our personal ones there as well, at PWTcast or PWTcast on ProWrestlingTees.com. There's so many awesome shirts, like the wonderful ones Ryan's wearing. And then new episodes drop every Monday. We have past guests such as we have Cole Cabana, Kylie Ray, the Young Bucks, Matt Cardona, Brian Myers, Vicky Guerrero. There's a fun Jericho Cruise episode that's essentially just our whole trip there. That it opens up with Frank and his wife Melissa talking about a death that occurred, and then it ends with Dave and I preventing someone from falling off of a boat. So that's a really fun episode. I've had Kevin Smith, the director Kevin Smith on there as well. A lot of fun episodes. Like it's if you go back and listen to them. We also have a bunch of just what we call like at-home episodes, which is Dave and I just talking about whatever. So yeah, again, if you want to hear some more of me, you can hear me on at PWTcast. And yeah, thanks again for having me on, you guys. I really appreciate it.
Yes, this has been so great. We are very grateful for your appearance tonight. Folks, don't forget to again, subscribe to the PWTCast wherever you find a podcast. Subscribe to our podcast wherever you find them, the Wrestling Nerd Broadcast. You can find them on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. Go ahead and check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/WNRDB. You can check us out on Twitter, Facebook, WNRDB. Am I missing anything? I feel like I'm missing. Oh, duh. ProWrestlingTees.com/The Wrestling Nerd Broadcast. And of course, it is nerd spelled NRD. And on behalf of Alberto, Scrump, Lara, I have been your king, the voice, Dave Canning, alongside the frozen founding father, Nick Carpenter, and the big cross man, Ryan Crossley. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to tell your mother you love her every day because, like Kevin Durant said, Mom, you're the real MVP. Good night, everyone, and God bless America.